Well, thank you for joining us at the epicenter of everyone's house, the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in hand and ready to talk about, as always, topics related to family financial security that are so important to all of us and our families' well-being. Of course, today we're going to talk about retirement security. We had concerns about a retirement savings gap before there was ever a pandemic, meaning people living longer and not having adequate savings to have a productive time in retirement, and the pandemic has only exacerbated our concerns about people having adequate savings. The good news for everybody watching and listening is that really smart people in Washington care about this and are doing things to address it and advancing policies that will really help us close the retirement savings gap. And we have two of the leaders here today. Senator Ben Cardin from the great state of Maryland and Senator Rob Portman from Ohio. So senators, welcome and thank you for joining us at the kitchen table.
It's good to be with you, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
I know I speak for both of us. We thank ACLI, everything you've done to work with us to try to improve retirement security for Americans.
Well, we're here to support you, and our Protecting Every Future community is here to support good policy as well as it relates to their health. So, but you're out around your states in Maryland and Ohio talking to constituents. What are you hearing from them in terms of their concerns about retirement security and just where we are right now?
Go ahead, Ben.
Rob, why don't you start?
Well, first of all, I have my coffee cup. Ben has his.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I don't have a Maryland one like you have Ohio.
But look, the kitchen table conversation in Ohio is really very simple in retirement. If you had a pretty big retirement account and you invested in the market, you probably did pretty well during COVID, despite all of the setbacks and all of the problems associated with social isolation and maybe not being able to go to work. If you were invested in the market because the market went up, probably you did okay. But if you were not invested in the market or had a small retirement nest egg or had no nest egg at all because you didn't have a 401k, in part because you weren't working, then you're in trouble. And so the data shows, and ACLI has some good data on this, I'm sure as well, that the folks out there who were not in the position of watching the market go up are really worried about their retirement more than ever. And the overall savings, while it's increased among people with more means, is less actually with people without means. And it's sort of the story of COVID-19. People say, we had sort of a K recovery instead of a V recovery. A V would be, you kind of go into the recession this way and you come back out the same way. That happened for a lot of people, but other people, it kind of went the other way, particularly if you had a job, say in the restaurant sector or hospitality or travel or entertainment where your job just didn't come back for a long time. So we think our legislation we've been talking about for some time now actually applies very well to the current situation to try to help people who are sitting around the kitchen table thinking, how am I going to get enough money in the bank for a secure retirement? And that peace of mind of retirement is what our legislation is all about.
Senator Cardin, what are you hearing?
I'm just going to add what Senator Portman is saying, and that is COVID-19 has caused major problems for many American families. And I agree with Senator Portman. If you had a significant amount of money in retirement savings and you didn't need those funds to get through COVID-19 and you could continue to make your contributions, you came out okay. But for many Americans, they lost their employment. They lost their contributions to a plan if they were in a plan. They had to take money out of their retirement system because they needed the money to survive during COVID-19 because they didn't have their full income. They may have been cut back the number of hours that they worked. In many cases, the disparity that existed before COVID-19 was made much worse. So it's now more challenging than ever before. So what I hear is that we have to provide greater opportunities for individuals to have retirement security, and we have to make up for what happened during COVID-19. So yes, we provided some statutory relief on mandatory distributions for the year, but quite frankly, those that were in desperate situations, that may not have helped them if they couldn't get that nest egg up to where it needed to be to start off with. So yes, this is an area where I find strong interest on how we can help people save for their retirement. And when you look at what the popular plans are there, where employers have matches or they can take advantage of a government, a savers credit, people are excited to participate in the programs.
Well, yes, and so for those who are fortunate enough to have a retirement savings vehicle offered by their employer and there's a match, that's like the first thing I told my daughter who just started her, first real job. You opt into that and you pay yourself first. But the concern, as you're both saying, is for those who work for small businesses or the 16 million Americans in the gig economy that don't have access to savings or haven't been able to save enough. Some of the policies you've looked at, both was secure, the big retirement savings package that was passed 2 years ago, and what you're looking at now with your legislation. Tell us how it will help address some of those needs, access to savings vehicles, and then facilitating the ability of people to save for retirement.
Well, Susan, our legislation specifically addresses some of the concerns you just talked about. There's a way that I like to look at it, and Senator Cardin has been a real champion for a lot of these groups, but one is the folks who are either part-time workers or low-income workers who tend not to have a plan. Only 22% part-time workers have a plan, roughly the same for people who are in the bottom quartile. So we wanted to do more to help those people. So we changed the rules to make it easier for a part-time individual to be able to get access to a plan. And there are a lot of part-time workers out there who during COVID, again, did not have any savings in their retirement to be able to add to, even though the market was doing well, they were not invested in the market. So those folks get helped. In terms of lower income workers, we are using the savers credit, which is already in law, and expanding it and making it, frankly, much more attractive for people who do not have taxable income because their income is so low and they can get it on a refundable basis. So that's a big difference. And for those folks who are living paycheck to paycheck, this is an opportunity to get them into a retirement system and frankly, get them into a relationship with their financial institution where they're banked, where they're saving money generally, where they're beginning to accumulate some wealth to be able to help their kids and just lead a better life. So it's a broader approach here, but that's really important. I'll let Ben talk about the other two, but the second one I'll mention is small businesses. I mean, again, the data is very clear there. If you're a small business person, less than half of people who work for small businesses have any plan at all. If you work for a big business, then you're in great shape. Less than half of people in small business are in that situation, whereas about 90% of people who are in large businesses are in that situation. So we focus a lot on small businesses and trying to close that gap by providing more incentives for small businesses to get involved in plans, including expanding the tax credit. So those are just a couple of areas where we specifically help. And then with regard to older workers and with regard to those, who aren't able to who are outliving their savings, maybe Ben might want to talk about some of the things we do there.
Yeah, and I agree with the 3 points that Senator Portman said. They're critically important. In regards to those who have been in and out of the workforce as a result of raising a family or COVID-19 and they couldn't make contributions, we find that this affects women more than men as far as the number of years that they're actually in the workforce where they can make contributions to their retirement plan. We established under legislation we authored earlier a catch-up contribution where you can put some additional funds in. Under our most recent legislation, we increased that amount so that you can get sufficient enough funds put away for retirement so that you can retire with security. So that catch-up contribution is one that we think is very important for us to improve, and it's in that bill. I want to mention one or two others, and then we can continue the discussion. I particularly like the incentives for automatic enrollment. We offer strong incentives for companies to periodically participate in automatic enrollment. Americans are famous for making decisions by inaction. And here we can get the automatic enrollment, and you can opt out, but at least you're in the plan and you're not losing out. Only about 35% of the plans today have an automatic enrollment feature, and we think this would help a great deal with that incentive. And then I want to cover the student debt issue. Student debt has increased dramatically over the last decade. It is by far, for many families, the largest single obligation that they have is paying off their student debt. And I just really want to applaud our chairman of our finance committee, Senator Wyden, for his leadership on this, Senator Portman. But we allow that the payment of your student debt can be your match for your employer so that you don't lose out on being able to participate in a pension plan because retirement plan because you don't have the resources because of student debt. I think that's a very important point, particularly for younger families, to be able to participate in retirement systems. And I'll mention one other that I think is important, and that is the minimum required distributions. People are living longer and they're outliving their retirement security. So we shouldn't be discouraging people from keeping more money available for later years. We know people are living to be 100 and still living useful lives. So allow them to accumulate enough without having to forced to take money out, and you have a floor of 100,000 that you can keep without a required minimum distribution. And we also put an encouragement in here for longevity annuity contracts so that you have a guaranteed income source throughout your entire life. These are some of the improvements that we've made in our plan.
Well, it's interesting to me how comprehensive it is when you start applying the policy to all the different subsets of us and all our different needs. Women, we live longer, we take time out to do caregiving, we're not paying into Social Security or earning a paycheck or paying into retirement. So we have needs. You've got young people who have student debt, and they say, well, my employer offers a 401k, but I can't afford to put money into it. So you've got a solution for that. So, and then the automatic enrollment, also known as a nudge, that still has choice to it, but it nudges you pretty hard to start saving and taking care of that need. And then one day you get older and you say, oh gosh, thank goodness that happened. So I think it's impressive the scope of your thinking on this and all that's in place for people. So just tell us the process from a 101 standpoint. Where is your legislation right now? Do you have some optimism it can pass this year? And what do you need people to do and what do you need them to tell their congressman or senator to make this happen?
We have a list of a couple of dozen of organizations that are involved with retirement security in one way or another who have supported it. And they've fanned out and talked to their members, and their members are now coming to the Hill virtually, mostly, not in person yet. So if we could encourage people to do that, it would be great. So pick up the phone, call your senator, call your congressman. But specifically, if you have an opportunity to work through one of your organizations, get them fired up and let them know that this is really important to you, because that ultimately is going to put our topic on the front of the agenda, on the front burner rather than something else, because things are busy around here. In terms of the process, I want to hear from Senator Cardin on this, because he's now in the majority. We go Portman, Cardin, Portman, depending on who's in the majority, and it's sometimes a bit of guesswork as to how this all happens. But our ideal would be that we would have a hearing. We've already had several hearings really about retirement security in the last several years that would relate to this bill, but have a hearing and then a markup. And a markup means that the legislation is actually written in committee, have it come out of committee, then go to the floor of the Senate and the House. And we could try to reconcile our differences pretty quickly because, as you know, the House is working on very similar legislation. It's also bipartisan, which makes this quite rare. It's both bipartisan and bicameral. And the House members are Richie Neal, who's the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, which is the key committee over there, and then Kevin Brady, who's the top Republican. So Ben and I have very good partners in the House to be able to get this done. So ideally, the president would sign the bill with a great signing ceremony where Senator Cardin and I could be there with some of our constituents who are benefiting from it and have that happen within the next few months here. But it will take a lot of effort from the outside to help push it.
Susan, can I just back up for a moment and sort of say how we approach retirement security? It goes back now many years when Senator Portman was Congressman Portman and I was a member of the House. And we set up a process in which we got the input from all stakeholders, with the understanding that you had to compromise and recognize that we needed unity and support in order to get a pension bill to the finish line. And I sort of called the process at that time, Portman Cardin, as a process more than two individuals. And it's been a real honor to work with Senator Portman over the years because it's been a true partnership. It's not one of us dominating. It really is trying to let stakeholders have their say, to sort of referee the process so that we can get something accomplished. At the end of the day, we were very successful. And back then, we didn't have the real enthusiasm of the leadership of either of our parties or from the White House when it was controlled by either Republicans or Democrats. So we were able to break through and get retirement security as a national priority, recognizing that America's economy was strong, but our savings ratios were not. And the safest place we could increase our savings was through retirement savings. And that would also help in regards to taking the pressure off of government programs, including Social Security. And we were able to break through. So we're using the same process today, but the difference here is we now have the active interests of our leadership, and I think also the administration. So we are very optimistic that under the leadership of our chairman and ranking member of the Finance Committee, Senator Wyden and Senator Crapo, that we'll be able to have an orderly hearing, consider the bill, and vote it out, because we're confident that these provisions are going to enjoy broad bipartisan support and use a process that will allow us to get to the finish line. So we hope that we'll be able to have a process that we'll have it action in our committee early enough to either bring it to the floor as an independent bill, what happened with the Secure Act, or to make it part of one of the omnibus bills that are moving through the United States Senate that need to be enacted as part of the budget or part of the end of the year programs, or that we could become part of. So that's our strategy. We think we're in line to do that. And I must tell you, I agree with Senator Portman. We need your help. We need our constituents to say this is an important subject. We need our stakeholders to work with us. Unity is going to be important, and the messaging is going to be very important.
All right.
Well said.
That word, bipartisan, I will attest for everybody listening to this that you two exemplify that and truly have worked together for years, which is why we call you a brand, Cardin, Portman, Cardin. But a lot of people are going to listen to this and say, no way, bipartisanship doesn't happen in Congress. It seems kind of old-fashioned. Do you think that's the case? Or is there still a place for cooperation in a distinguished body called the U.S. Congress?
I think some things that are old-fashioned actually make sense, and this is one. You know, Washington used to work a little differently in the sense that even the leadership, Republican and Democrat side, spent more time not just trying to get to know each other and talk together, but actually strategize on how to get things done for the country. So we hope that once again our process, as Ben said so well, will be successful in bringing people together for a good result. And it does require some compromise, by the way. And I want to point out that back in the days of the House, when Senator Cardin and I passed 3 different bills, really, that were Portman Cardin or Cardin Portman, sometimes the Democratic side of the aisle wasn't all that complimentary of Ben's work, and he stuck in there and knew that it was the right thing to do. And at times that happened to me as well. But he took some arrows for his principled stand, and it really was about expanding retirement savings for all Americans and understanding that you want to have the safety net. Social Security is incredibly important. We both support Social Security reform, in fact, but the private retirement savings is the key leg of that tool that we can affect here in the United States Congress, and that it was something that was positive for the families, the individuals, for the economy, for the savings rate. And so it requires that kind of a commitment. And I don't think it's just old-fashioned, although it is. I think it should be part of our new fashion, because it's the way to actually solve big problems, not just retirement savings, but many others.
Susan, I think there's more bipartisan work going on in the United States Senate than the public would understand. Senator Portman's involved right now in a major effort to try to move forward on an infrastructure bill. Senator Portman and I have been involved in so many other issues in addition to retirement savings, including economic development issues, and including tax reform issues, IRS. We could go down the list of issues that we've worked together on in order to get good policy enacted into law. It's not only getting policy enacted where bipartisanship works, you also have the staying power. It won't be changed year in and year out as party affiliations change. The control of the Senate is 50-50. We only control the Senate, Democrats, because the Vice President of the United States, the President of the Senate, is a Democrat. So the parties will change in control of Congress and in control of the White House. We want policies that can stand the test of time so that you can do your planning. Whether it's planning in the life insurance industry or it's planning in the financial services industries, we want you to be able to plan. We want families to be able to plan. So we get, I think, better policy when we work together and more predictable policies for the future when we can have this type of bipartisan cooperation.
Well, Senators, for everybody listening who is learning about the process and how it really works and how we get things done just by hearing from your experience and your wisdom, I want them to know this is why they're thought leaders and this is why they have the track record they do. I mean, you anticipated the retirement savings gap between longevity and savings long before it happened. You started doing things, you started working together, even if you took some slings and arrows, and you've gotten the results. So I'm going to raise my coffee cup to you and thank you both again for being part of this kitchen table discussion on retirement security. And just know we're there. Our community, Protecting Every Future, will be there to help you get this latest accomplishment over the finish line. We'll look forward to cheering you at the bill signing ceremony when it gets to the president's desk. But until then, we're ready to go to work, and thank you for being with us.
Great. Thanks, Susan. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks. See you all later. Thank you all.